The White House has tremendous energy. It has tremendous spirit. It is a great place to be working. Many people want every single job. You know, I read where, oh, gee, maybe people don't want to work for Trump, but believe me, everybody wants to work in the White House.
Not everyone. Shortly after President Trump said he likes conflict, we learned White House economic advisor Gary Cohn is planning to resign. For more on this, let's bring in Caitlin Huey-Burns. She is a CBSN political contributor and national political reporter for Real Clear Politics. All right, so Caitlin, is this the kind of conflict the president was talking about?
Well, this was certainly big news today, and it was interesting that they made this announcement after the markets had closed. There was this concern that it would rattle the markets, and it shows that Donald Trump is winning out against his former now top economic policy advisor. What was interesting to me was hearing from Republicans on Capitol Hill lamenting the fact that he was leaving the White House because he was pushing against these tariffs that the president wants to impose. This is something that Republicans are very concerned about, especially since they think they have a good economic message to sell to voters already, and that this could undermine the tax cuts. So Cohn leaving is a very significant move, and I'm interested to see how the markets react tomorrow and who the president will choose to fill this position, if he chooses anyone at all, given that he makes his own policy decisions on this, apparently.
I want to ask you more about Republicans in a moment, but first, back on Cohn for a moment. Do we know why he is leaving now? It's ostensibly about tariffs, but we know that in the past there were definitely friction points between the president and Gary Cohn.
Certainly. Remember, he talked about offering his resignation after the Charlottesville events, only to come back to the president's good graces later on. He's been on kind of a whirlwind within this White House. He was brought on to be the point person on tax reform. He has been in and out of favor with the president multiple times. And so it's very interesting that just a couple of weeks ago, when John Kelly, the chief of staff, was being criticized and there was talk of him being removed from that post, there were names like Gary Cohn being bounced around that the president might bring in for that chief of staff role. And only a couple weeks later, he is now on the outside. And so I think the tariffs were kind of the last straw for him. He had said that tax reform would be his major thing in this White House and that he would probably leave afterwards. But then, you know, he said he would stick around, wanted to do things like infrastructure and other economic related items. And it's very apparent that those things really aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Is there a chance that these tariffs won't go into place now that you have Gary Cohn leaving and you have, as you mentioned, Republicans who oppose these tariffs very publicly? You've got House Speaker Paul Ryan among them. I mean, is there a possibility that now with this departure, perhaps the tariffs will not, in fact, be put into place?
I think that it shows that Trump is winning out on this issue. And this is something that we talk about Trump's inconsistencies all of the time. But this is one issue that he has been talking about for 3 decades, really. This was a consistent theme for him on the campaign trail. It was something that really endeared him to his base of support. And you heard him earlier today when he was giving that press conference saying that, look, this is something that he told American workers he would do. Now, he is getting a lot of pushback from Republicans who knew that they had this divide with the president when it comes to trade. So we'll see what Republicans choose to do with it. It's one thing to kind of say out loud that they oppose this, but whether they'll take any action in Congress to try to curb some of these tariffs will be interesting to see. And also, we don't know exactly what the details are. We don't know exactly what the exemptions will be like, if there are any, and what exactly the president will do. He talked about reforming NAFTA. That's a very arduous process, as we know. A lot of things contingent on that, he says. So we'll have to see what the policy actually is.
Do we know how Gary Cohn's departure might affect that power struggle that we know continues to be ongoing in the West Wing?
Right. Well, the power struggle between kind of the nationalist, protectionist wing and the free trade kind of people like Gary Cohn, who is actually a registered Democrat, former Goldman Sachs executive, of course. So you might see a lot of Trump supporters cheering the exit of Gary Cohn and seeing these other people kind of rise up to Trump's favor. But I think last week was very telling, given how the president made up his own mind on this and went forward with it without briefing really anybody else, especially those on Capitol Hill. And so he's kind of running the show when it comes to trade.
Well, also on Tuesday, President Trump talked about what he's calling a positive development in relations with North Korea after Kim Jong-un said he would be willing to start talks about ending the North's nuclear weapons program. And here's some of what the president said.
I think that they are sincere, but I think they're sincere also because the sanctions and what we're doing with respect to North Korea, including, the great help that we've been given from China, and they can do more. But I think they've done more than certainly they've ever done for our country before. So China has been a big help. I think that's been a factor. But the sanctions have been very, very strong and very biting. And we don't want that to happen. So I really believe they are sincere. I hope they're sincere. We're going to soon find out.
I mean, this is not status quo when it comes to this issue of North Korea and China. I mean, how significant is the president's apparent willingness to have these talks in the first place with North Korea?
It is very significant, and he has made a point to say that his predecessors couldn't get anything done on North Korea, and he would be the one to do things differently. And he came under a lot of fire for doing things differently, saying Rocket Man at the UN, for example. On a call today with reporters and White House officials, they were saying that they were guardedly optimistic about these talks, but they wouldn't really get into the details of what exactly they want to see from North Korea to get to the actual table. They do want to see a de-escalation of their nuclear capabilities, but what that looks like is still unclear. So you see the president talking today. Again, this is, a week after the Olympics have concluded. The vice president was out there in the beginning. His daughter was part of a delegation in South Korea, I should say. And so you're seeing this willingness on behalf of the president to talk. I think that was kind of newsy today.
And has there been much reaction to this on Capitol Hill?
Well, people are very cautious about this. Of course, this has been an issue that has dogged multiple presidents, how to move forward with this. There's also this skepticism about whether Trump knows exactly what he is doing in this situation. So a lot of people are kind of in a wait-and-see mode.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns. Thanks so much, Caitlin.